Hi guys and welcome to Tutes Online. Today we're going to look at the structure of the heart. Okay, here we have the aorta. Here's the heart. And let's go over the linings. First of all, we have the pleura. And this is what's covering the lungs. Then we have fibrous pericardium. Then we have a serous pericardium lining, which is here. After the serous pericardium, we have the pericardial cavity. Then we have another layer of serous pericardium. And this is called serous visceral pericardium. Right here, we have the central tendon of the diaphragm. So let's learn a little bit more about the pericardium. So the outer layer is the fibrous pericardium. And this is connective tissue surrounding the outside of the pericardial sac. It's attached to the mediastinum, the pleura, and the central tendon of the diaphragm. Then we have the serous pericardium, which is a closed sac within the fibrous pericardium. And it consists of parietal pericardium, which lines the cavity and is pain sensitive. And we have the visceral pericardium, which covers the heart and bases of the great vessels. Let's learn some borders. I find the best way to do this is to draw a very simple diagram. So that's our simple heart. Here we have the superior border. Here we have the left border. Here is the apex. Here is what's known as the diaphragmatic surface. Because it's down here with the central tendon and the diaphragm. On the front, you have the sternocostal surface. On the back, which I'll draw with a dotted line, is the posterior surface. And this side here is the right border. Okay, so how do we locate all of these borders? Well, we've got some features. The superior border is at the level of the fourth or fifth rib. The apex is at the level of the xiphosternal joint. And the mid-clavicular line. The right border is at the right margin of the sternum. So if you were to locate this, the heart, we have our superior border at the level of the fourth or fifth rib. We have our diaphragmatic surface coming here, and our apex ending up at the mid-clavicular line, and our right border at the right margin of the sternum. Okay, just some info. The heart has 4 chambers, 2 atria, which receive blood, and 2 ventricles, which pump blood out. The walls are made of cardiac muscle. It's lined with endocardium, which is endothelium and connective tissue. The flow through the heart is partially controlled by valves. And it has both systemic and pulmonary circulation. let's go into a bit more detail about the structure of the heart. And we'll start off with the right atrium. Some information first. So the right atrium receives blood from the systemic circulation, and this is via the superior vena cava, which is blood from the body, and this has no valve. Then we have the inferior vena cava, again blood from the body because it's systemic circulation, and this has a flap valve. And the reason why this one doesn't have a valve and this one does have a valve is because the superior vena cava is coming downwards, so it's using gravity for the blood to flow back in, whereas the inferior vena cava is going against gravity, so it needs a valve to stop that blood from going in the opposite direction. It also receives blood via the coronary sinuses, and this is for the coronary circulation itself, for the draining of blood of the heart. And this is about 60% of the drainage of the coronary circulation. And there's a flap valve. The right atrium has pectinate muscles, and a crista terminalis, which looks like a comb. So the crista terminalis is this part, the handle of the comb, and the pectinate muscles are the prongs of the comb. And it also has a smooth posterior lining. So let's have a look at what the right atrium looks like. Okay, here is the superior vena cava. We've cut a little window out of the right atrium so we can see inside. Here is what's known as an auricle, and this is the right auricle. Then we go into our window. We have a small patch here called the fossa ovalis. This is what's known as a hole in the heart. It's a fetal remnant. What happens is there is a communication between the two atria in the fetus, and then once you're born, this hole closes up. Sometimes it doesn't close up, but it can be corrected with surgery. It just looks like a sort of small opaque patch, or a yellowish patch. Just down here we have the opening of the inferior vena cava. Right next to this we have the opening of the coronary sinus. And here we have our valve. And this is a tricuspid valve. And it's known as the right atrioventricular valve. And this occurs at the level of the 6th right costal cartilage. So the blood comes in from the upper body, head and neck, and in this way from the lower body and gets pumped through this valve into the right ventricle. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So attaching to the flaps of that atrioventricular valve, we have little cords called chorda tendinae. And the chorda tendinae itself are attached to these papillary muscles. And this is what controls the opening of these flaps of the atrioventricular valve. Then we have this business here. Now this is actually extending throughout the whole of the right ventricle. It's called trabecular carne. And they're just muscular folds. The only place where you don't find the trabecular carne is here, and this is the smooth infundibulum before the pulmonary valve, which is here. Again, this is another tricuspid valve. Coming up here, you have the pulmonary trunk. So the blood is coming from the right atrium through that tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, then back out through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary trunk. Then we have the pulmonary arteries. These are going to the lungs to become oxygenated. So the right ventricle and atrium are dealing with deoxygenated blood and returning it to the lungs to become oxygenated again. Let's move on. Let's do the left atrium now. So the blood's gone to the lungs and it's coming back now. It's now oxygenated and it enters through the pulmonary veins. Here we have the left auricle, and within this we have pectinate muscles. Which were those comb muscles. Down here we have the mitral valve, this is a bicuspid valve, and it's at the level of the third left costal cartilage. The left atrium is mostly posterior, and it has a smooth lining. So the blood's coming in, going through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. We have another two papillary muscles this time, with chordae tendineae attaching to the flaps of that mitral valve. We have trabecular carne again, extending throughout the ventricle. Here you have a membranous surface called the atrioventricular septum. Here you have a thickening in the wall of the cardiac muscle, and this is called the interventricular septum. Moving up, you have another tricuspid valve, and this is called the aortic valve. And up here you have your aorta. So our oxygenated blood is coming from the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, gets pumped out through the aortic valve into the aorta, and then out to the rest of the body. And that about wraps it up for the structure of the heart. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you come back and learn more about the human body. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.